Hello, everyone. My name is LBK, and this is King Pie Podcast. On today's episode, I have with me another cricket fan from the West. Welcome, Sushi. How are you, brother?
I'm good. How are you, LBK?
I'm good too. Sushi, let me recap this week of IPL for you. So, the last time we were here, Josh Butler was on route to his third century in this IPL season, fourth overall, and Rishabh Pant was complaining about a no ball, rightfully so. Josh Butler earned a Man of the Match award, and Rishabh Pant earned a 100% match fees penalty. Also, Delhi lost the game by 15 runs. Elsewhere, Gujarat Titans lost to defeated KKR by 8 runs. That was a pretty close game. SRH routed RCB in a pretty one-sided game. Lucknow defeated Mumbai by 36 runs, where again the game was pretty one-sided, which was also the eighth successive defeat for Mumbai, and now their chances of qualification are pretty bleak, to say the least. CSK by 12 runs in another relatively close game, and in a very high-scoring thriller, Gujarat beat SRH in on the last ball by 5 wickets, and in some other one-sided matches, Rajasthan beat RCB by 29 runs, while Delhi beat KKR by 3 wickets. Now, Sushi, so let's begin with the Pacers. As we know, in the Gujarat SRH game, which was relatively high scoring, we saw Umran Malik come to the fore. He took all the 5 wickets that fell for Gujarat, and he has had quite an unique season till now. He came in last year as a replacement for T. Natarajan. He has played almost all the games this season, and initially he was going pretty expensive, but seems like he has got a great rhythm recently.
Yeah, it's really surprising to see Umran Malik get off of. I know a lot of people were saying earlier on that he just seems like he just has pace. There's not much accuracy behind his bowling, but it looks like he's taken huge steps and improved since the start of this IPL, and also since last year. I know last year there was not much going on about him, but there was like a little bit popping up about his pace, and now it seems like he's really taking into bowling in the IPL and really finding his rhythm.
And every time we talk about someone with raw pace like Umran, and there's a lot of names that come to our mind, maybe like Sean Tate, or even if you want to be a bit recent, there's Haris Rauf as well. And first thing that comes to our mind is that it kind of the pace becomes a bit of a novelty, right? I mean,
Mhm.
people start thinking of it as just pace and nothing else. But looks like recently there have been pacers who are not just bowling fast; they are also bowling accurate. Haris Rauf has gotten better recently. Now you can see Umran Malik getting better. So looks like you know f- seems like bowlers are finally finding the way to master the art of pace bowling. In to say.
Yeah, and I think part of that also goes with if you look at the actions of these bowlers, they're incredibly efficient, especially with somebody like say Haris Rauf, Umran Malik, or even someone like Jasprit Bumrah, who have very they could extract as much pace as they can with not as much effort as say somebody like Shoaib Akhtar, who would be coming in running all the way from the boundary line. And I think it's really great to see, especially considering there hasn't been many young pacers that you've seen coming from India that I know of that have taken to taken the world by storm, basically. Can you think of any others recently, at least, that have had the impact that Umran Malik has?
No, it is tough to think. I mean, even though we see there have been great pacers that have come from India, but I think they have slowly built up. For most of the cases, you see Bhuvneshwar, Shami, or Bumrah for himself. Even Ishant and Umesh took their sweet time before Virat got the captaincy and built them up slowly. Yeah, okay. So what I'm saying is usually the Indian pacers take a little bit of time to gather steam, like say Bhuvneshwar Kumar or Shami, both of them debuted in late 2012, but it took them a while to get to their best. Even Ishant Sharma and Umesh Yadav, who came on a bit earlier, even they took their time. So there's never been the case of pace sensation, to say the least, in India. So this seems Umran seems to be kind of a new breed, to say the least.
Yeah, especially if you look at some of the recent pacers that India has, like the newer pacers that come up, like Mohammad Siraj, he's already 28. I know Navdeep Saini isn't like one of the primary picks, but he's also uh, in his late 20s, and I think also Shardul Thakur, he's in his 30s right now. So it hasn't been something like where they've been just throwing in new pacers as soon as they hit the stage. And I think part of it is also because of how India is set up with like their whole pipeline to getting bowlers into the international side, and also because there hasn't exactly been anyone like Umran Malik in recent years who've just had such an impact that people are calling for his debut. Like I think recently Kevin Peterson said that Umran Malik should be thrown into the deep end and just put into an England test. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that is one thing that people kind of start debating way too early, to say the least. I mean, Siraj, people say Siraj has been doing well, but we kind of forget that he first came into the IPL as a bowler in 2014. So there have been a lot of years that came behind him before he came into the national team. Even Bumrah debuted in 2013 in the IPL, and from 13 it took him 3 years just to debut in the white ball, and then get to the red ball. Another 2 years to get to the red ball scene. So I don't think it is obviously possible for someone like Umran to just get into it instantly. But as you saw, he has debuted in first class cricket, and he has played, I think, one test against South Africa, I think, and he did not do that well. But obviously, it takes time, and in his case, he's even younger than the other guys. I mean, Bumrah was, I think, in his mid 20s. Even Navdeep Saini, who has not played that much of red ball cricket, he plays for the A team. He's almost 30. So I think it is all. I mean, it is too early to get him into the red ball team. Maybe he'll get a chance in the white ball, the limited overs team first, maybe the T20s, to say the least, and then I guess it can catch on for the red ball, from my
Uh,
opinion.
yeah, I agree with that. Like Mohammad Siraj only recently started becoming a mainstay into the test side, and he already has 50 FC matches under his belt. I think there's also parallels to be had with Haris Rauf and Naseem Shah with how there's calls for them to be thrown in. Remember back in the Australia Test series, Naseem Shah was just fresh out of bowling up just a couple of FC matches, and he was already thrown into Test, and that did not go well for Pakistan. I think it would be wise for them to hold back on Umran Malik and just manage their bowlers well, so that they don't have to throw in somebody that's 22 and just starting to take the world by storm into the Test side.
Yeah, and I mean, there's obviously some thought needed to be put into it, because obviously when someone is 22, you do not need him exactly. I mean, right now there's everything in Pacers department that India needs already. So you can take your time honing. I mean, you can give him the time to hone his skills in the domestic set, and also take him maybe on the A team tours to get him used to the Sina conditions, maybe. But in general terms, I mean, there's no need to right now get him anywhere near the red ball setup, especially the national setup, because it already has what it needs. And I think Umran Malik himself does not need to be in that setup right now, because that is not where he is right now, from my opinion.
Yeah, I perfectly agree with that. Like, you already have somebody like, say, Bumrah there, who's your main strike bowler. You have other bowlers like Shami, Siraj, Ishant Sharma. They're all there and well set players inside of the Test side. I don't think they need to push a young pacer into the highest of highs right away.
Dude, do you know the story behind the scouting of Umran Malik?
I briefly read about it, but I am not too like comfortable with that story. Like I'm don't know much about him.
Yeah, so basically, some scout folks from SRH were visiting. There's a religious place in Jammu named Vaishno Devi. So basically, that's where they found Abdul Samad, and it was Abdul Samad who said he knows a guy who bowls fast, and basically it was like a third person reference. Like the scouts found Abdul Samad, and Abdul Samad suggested Umran Malik to them. So then that's how he came on board with SRH last year.
Yeah, that's a crazy way to get on. It's really odd to see how sometimes you just randomly find someone with so much talent just out of nowhere. I mean, there's so many people that probably bowl very close to his level, but it's all about like the luck of draw or however you get connected to any of those scouts. And I think
He,
Abdul Samad hasn't been playing recently, has he, right?
yeah, he's been out of team for a few games now.
So it's crazy to see him just like bring on
Yeah,
Umran Malik and then himself end up being on the sidelines for SRH, the team that was mainly scouting for him.
yeah, maybe it is sometimes like, yeah, funny how that worked out for someone like Abdul Samad. Or I mean, there have been cases of someone referring to the teams about some other guy
Mm-hmm.
and ending themselves ending up outside, away from the team. So not much of a new thing, but it is quite surprising when it happens. I mean, another pacer that we can talk about is Kuldeep Sen, who recently debuted for Rajasthan Royals, and he also has a similar story. Just like Haris Rauf had, like how Umran Malik had. Kuldeep Sen is actually from MP, from Riva to be precise, and he has actually had a lot of experience in first class cricket already. So he is not exactly the kind of prospect that you say Umran Malik is, because Kuldeep is already in his mid 20s. He has played like 15 or 18 first class games. So his story is kind of a different one. And as we saw in the RCB game, his bowling is also kind of a different thing. He's more of a swing and bounce kind of guy. Especially when you see that dismissal of Glenn Maxwell in the RCB game, you can see he extracts a decent bounce as well. So looks like he is, one of those Aussie kind of bowlers, to say the
Mm.
least. Aussie and South African bowlers that we usually see.
So just going off of that, the connection you made about him getting bounced off it, do you see him possibly traveling with the India team as a net bowler or as a reserve player, even maybe, just to help them get acclimated to the bounce in Australia?
Yeah, actually, that is the one advantage of finding all this talent in IPL, that you can take them anywhere you want as a net bowler. I mean, if you are not going to play someone like Kuldeep Sen or Prasidh Krishna or Umran Malik in red ball, you can obviously take them to take them to those tours with you as net bowlers, so that maybe they can get a bit of a feel for those pitches as well. And obviously the batters can get practice for their they can get practice for the preparedness, because for India it has always been an issue, especially the height. I remember Javagal Srinath and Venkatesh Prasad were pretty tall bowlers, but pretty much since they retired, Ishan Sharma is the only tall bowler that we have had, and everyone else is usually pretty average height. So even though they are really great, someone like Umesh Yadav who has pace, or someone like Bhuvneshwar Kumar or Shami who have the movement, but I think we have missed having a bowler with who has the swing and the bounce. So I think that is something works in our favor with having Kuldeep Sen or Prasidh Krishna in the mix.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. It's hard to get out in all those conditions. That's why you have, especially in tests, such a difficulty with away games. You're not used to the conditions. You're not used to the bowlers in those conditions, and it's not exactly like easy to make it so your FC structure can emulate that at all levels. So yeah, having those bowlers there as net bowlers and being able to help your main test side and also help themselves as they're traveling around and getting used to other conditions is really like a great benefit for both sides.
Yeah, and one thing that I liked about recent Indian approach, I mean, I'm talking about the West Indies series that recently happened, especially the ODI series. You could see that the pitches that were made from a perspective to challenge the batters. I mean, the pitches had swing early on. There was a lot of bounce and movement on the offer, even until 15th over, to be honest. And looks like that, as you said, that you cannot really emulate those South African or Australian conditions in subcontinent. But I think that can be your best bet to maybe try to have those similar kind of pitches that I think India once tried having them in the 2016 tour of England, where most of the pitches were very sporty, and even England competed really well in that series, even though they lost 4-0. They were in every game, in almost every game, they were doing really well. So I think that is one point of those are the two sides of this thing, because you have all the prospects that you're getting from the IPL, someone like Umran Malik or Kuldeep Singh, and then there's the emulation of those Cena pitches that you can try, in the comfort of your home, to test these bowlers out and to get your batters prepared for those conditions. So I think it works in, it's like killing two birds with a stone.
Mhm. So just to, I guess, get some insight into the Indian FC structure, how do you think somebody like Kuldeep Sen has gotten so used to being able to bowl with high pace and being able to extract that bounce? If you look at something like the county structure in England, usually the bowlers are the more medium pacers that can extract swing and seam. Those are the bread and butter, and that's what we see usually gets pushed into the England Test side. That's what works there, so that's what they had to choose from. But from my knowledge, India doesn't have an FC structure where some bowler that gets a high bounce is going to necessarily be the most successful there.
Yeah, I think one thing that has been prevalent recently is even though the FC structure and your record in first class is invaluable. Obviously, it is what will get you to the red ball team. I think one thing that has been good is that got talk about someone like Kuldeep Sen, or other example would be Avesh Khan. These bowlers have like 3 or 4 coaches right now. I'm actually talking about their bowling only, not their team coach or something. So what is happening with them is they are being coached on different levels. I read about Kuldeep that he has had one coach since he was 8 years old, and he has stuck with him since then. So I think what happens is when someone identifies a talent like Kuldeep Singh, that he can bowl in a certain way. I think sticking with that one coach is helping them really well. I think Avesh Khan has also said the same, that when he got into the MP team, he was advised by someone. I don't really remember their name, but seems like sticking with them is helping these guys, because once you get into the state team or national team, I think often bowlers lose their way. Someone like Bhuvneshwar Kumar, who was, as you said, he is kind of that England bowler that you're talking about. That he was mainly based on swing rather than pace, but he chose to go for the pace, and kind of ended up losing his fitness. But seems like it is not happening now. Now bowlers are sticking to their strength. So I think that is what is powering this whole FC structure and the development of pacers right now.
Yeah, that's interesting of you to know, especially considering this has more been like a recent development, maybe in the past decade or so, where Indian pacers have become more at the forefront in like world, especially test side pace bowling attacks. I don't think anyone could argue right now that India's bowling lineup right now is incredibly strong with pace, which isn't something you would see somebody saying like maybe 20 years ago. So I think it's something like that is definitely effective for them, where bowlers are being coached to what their strengths are, and they're not trying to adapt to something else that might harm them. Like say Bhuvnesh Varma, he has had numerous injuries whenever he tries to push his pace, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's not something that you could just push and get out of like something that you've been used to since you were a young bowler. I think that's also the same reason why you have it's completely unrelated, but people that throw when they're younger, it's harder for them to adapt when they get older and change their action and actually stick to the changed action. It's not something that their body and is used to right now.
Yeah. I mean, it is a kind of a simple thing in general because there are people who start off with a certain coach on, say, club level or state level, and then obviously once they move to the national team, they have a different coach, and that kind of I'm not going to use the word misguide here, but obviously, they fall off the track like we did. So that is something that is not their own mistake, but the mistake of the system, because system is the one that is misguiding them. So I think following your own routine or your own understanding here is the right way to go, like Kuldeep or Avesh did, because that is going to work for them. It's not like Kuldeep, who is 25 right now, would uh, try to find a new niche suddenly and be great at it. So I think that is the way to go as far as finding your strength or working on your strength goes, especially for the pacers, as pace bowling is obviously pretty toll-inducing job.
Hmm. And I think going with that, with load management and also rehab, is something that they need to watch out for. You have many pacers coming up. You don't have to bowl each of them into the ground and just rotate through them. And I think that's something to note with the rehab in India as well. I think it has been criticized, the NCA, with how rehabilitation has went for numerous players. So definitely some problems at the top level they need to watch out for, so they don't put too much pressure on these young bowlers and just bowl them into the ground and make it so their injuries prevent them from going back to the national side.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly aware about what's the whole thing that went down there, but seems like the mistakes that were being made during the rehabilitation were at the end point or something, where they needed the final uh, what should I say, the final clearance to
Mhm.
say the certain guy is fit.
Yeah.
Basically, the last fitness test to prove that you're fit. That's
Mhm.
why where the things were going wrong. And obviously, the last test is the most important one, because
Mhm.
that's where you will prove how fit you are. So obviously, load management is one thing. Right now, India has that luxury to manage the load of someone like Jasprit Bumrah or Mohammad Shami by obviously playing these younger bowlers in white ball series, especially at home, because that is again killing two birds with a stone, because you are mm, getting to try these bowlers for the home conditions where the World Cup would be played in 2013, 2023, beg your pardon. So I think that is helping our cause only. So that has been something with India for last 5 or 6 years, even probably since Virat Kohli became the captain, because he has kind of brought on this whole new crop of pacers, to say the least.
Yeah, I think it was like a few years ago. Bhuvneshwar Kumar had an injury and he was cleared, but it wasn't noticed, so he was still playing despite carrying an injury. So yeah, load management definitely something that I think India has done well with that. So just need to keep on maintaining that same level-headed approach with the new young pacers that they have coming up.
Of course. Moving on. Now this week, as we saw, RCB that had been doing really well in their past games until the game against Lucknow, where they won by 12 runs. And since then, they seem to have fallen off the grace, to say the least. Their top order had pretty much been carried by Faf and Maxwell, and Dinesh Karthik and Shahbaz Ahmed were doing the job for them at the end. But seems like since then they have completely fallen off. The top order is not scoring runs from last two games. They have not gotten anything from Dinesh Karthik and Shahbaz Ahmed either. And even though the bowlers are doing well, they have been getting no support from their batters, to say the least. So, uh, I mean, you have seen the game against SRH. What did you think of that batting performance of RCB?
I mean, there's not much to say about the batting performance. Didn't last too long there. It's really interesting to see, especially considering I think I noticed some people saying that this is almost like a pattern where RCB starts off strong in the season, and then the last few games they start losing their way. I think there's also has to be like some credit given to the SRH bowling lineup. They bowled brilliantly, so it wasn't just like a complete RCB batting lineup failure. It was also just brilliant bowling from the SRH bowlers. It's
Yeah,
really hard to pinpoint where they could improve because there have been players that have been doing brilliantly, like you said, DK and Shahbaz Ahmed, and then Faf du Plessis up at the top.
I think from where I see this whole thing, there has been a lot of situations where let's say Faf saved them or Maxwell saved them or Shabazz and DK saved them, and seems like they kind of put swept everything under the rug as soon as the game ends, and RCB has won the game, and they kind of forget what happened at the top, especially with Anuj Rawat and Virat since that game against MI, where they both scored well, and ever since they both have lost their form completely, and obviously Virat has not been doing well for an even longer time. So I think that has been their problem. That I mean, and it is something that happens with a lot of teams. That when you're winning, everything seems fine, and suddenly when you're losing, you realize there's a lot of things that are going wrong with you.
Yeah, with that, I do think there's something that we need to note, though, that I personally did not see too much of a problem with their approach beforehand, especially considering the whole like cliche about how batsmen win new matches. It's you're not going to expect all of your batsmen to perform every single game. There's only going to be a few batsmen that are really going to push you forward. There are the rare cases where there are team efforts where anyone that batted, they clicked immediately and they just like took the game away. But really, it always, especially in T20, it comes down to a couple of batsmen that are carrying the weight. And just in this game, none of the batsmen really stepped up.
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing that we kind of forget that about T20s, as you said, that you do not need a whole lineup of batters doing well. Sometimes even two batters or three batters performing well win you the game. But I think, as you said, that seems like the situation is being blown out of proportions a bit because obviously because of that SRH game. But from the RR game, one thing that needs to be brought to the light is how everyone from the RCB lineup seems to be in a bit of a hurry. I think there's obviously a lack of control from my point of view. That the dismissals in both games showed that the batters are in kind of a hurry. I mean, DK got run out. Even Shehbaz Ahmed was pretty bad during his stay. He was struggling with both his timing and his running. Even Faf and Maxwell probably wouldn't have, messed with the balls that they got out on. So seems like there's a lack of control in the batting, to say the least, especially given that they are playing with the teams who have great pacers and they are making the ball move.
Yeah, that's interesting of Ethan though, especially considering this doesn't seem like it's a problem that's just been these past few matches. You could probably say it's almost been like many season-long problem for RCB where there isn't much structure in their batting lineup. I think like a structure in the sense that they're not actually properly batting together, especially when these match situations where they're down several wickets, they just need to reconsolidate and then just take the game late and hopefully you have your batsmen down there and they're ready and set, then you could take the game. I think the DK run out is like probably one of the biggest downfalls there because there was no need for that run there. And that was an easy wicket that they gave away of a batsman that's been in form.
Kind of a thing with RCB for almost all the 15 years that they have been in existence. That RCB always seems to be the team that has this whole, rotating door of players that come in, go. We have never seen them have players that stay for a long time outside Hull, Kohli, and De Villiers, and now recently they've gotten Siraj and probably Maxwell. Yes, Maxwell and Siraj have been retained recently. So seems like they do to have an established batting order, which is kind of a thing, which is still kind of a thing, and it seems like that hurts them more often than not. I mean, even right now, they don't know if they want to bat Virat at three. They want to bat him they want to make him open with Anuj? Do they want Faf to play at three, or do they want Faf to open? Seems like they're always confused about their batting lineup, and when they seem to figure it out, they kind of release the players that they finally had in those places.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially considering Virat suddenly opening in that match, and it did not change much with his performances. If you're gonna keep on chopping and changing your lineups, you're not going to properly back your players. You're not going to give the players confidence that you could fail a couple of times. It's T20, it happens. You're just keep playing, and eventually the runs will come. They're not properly settling on one lineup that they could do. And I know with T20, there's a lot that you could do with the lineup where down the order, you're going to change around based on based on the situation of the match. Like say the Ash when retiring whole thing a few weeks ago. But your top order, I don't think you could move around so often and expect your batsmen to come in with confidence that if I fail this game, it's all right because they'll back me in the next one.
Yeah, I mean, this has also been the issue with the KKR as well. I mean, they've played 9 games till now, and even they are still just rotating their batters on a regular basis. I mean, they've had Venkatesh Iyer and Rahane opening. Then they tried Sam Billings and Narayan in the opening spot. They've tried Finch and Narayan in the opening spot. Then they tried Finch with Venkatesh Iyer, and seems like they're just going through the motions as far as their batting order goes, and it is hurting them a lot.
Yeah, especially considering what they're doing with their batting lineup is also harming their bowling lineup a bit. The match yesterday against Delhi Capitals, they didn't have enough bowlers to finish the game strongly, and uh, DC took it away from them. So it's hard to get a good team composition and rhythm when you don't have a set 11 players that you could focus on.
Yeah, and especially uh, people have been saying that Rahane did not do well with the bat after the first game, and that's why he was dropped. But I think the whole point of having Rahane in the team was that your tournament, most of the part of tournament would be happening in Maharashtra and especially Mumbai. There's three grounds in Mumbai that where the tournament is being played, except Pune. And Rahane is someone who is from this place, so he basically be your second in command here. But dropping him means you're basically dropping an important part of your leadership group. And I mean, yes, Aaron Finch is one of the best T20 batters, but I don't think he can fill in for all the experience that Rahane has playing in these conditions, and even his general
Not only
experience
that, the
becomes.
experience that you lose, you're also reserving an important foreign spot right now with Aaron Finch. So your foreign spot is very valuable. You need somebody that could take command and be able to fulfill their duties there. And I don't think people have really seen Aaron Finch being that batsman yet for KKR.
Yeah, yeah, that is for sure. I mean, that is the whole point, because even in a situation where, let's say, Rahane gets out for a single digit score, you still get a leader who will talk to your bowlers, because obviously, as we have seen with the Shreyas Iyer, he is still pretty green in the captaincy department, and he needs someone. I mean, uh, we have talked about this earlier, that the KKR management did really well to uh, form a leadership group at a such at such a cheap price. I mean, they got uh, Tim Saudi, they got Umesh Yadav, and they got Ajinkya Rahane for a combined price of 4.5 crore. And we need to remember that these are the three guys that might have a lot of experience playing in these conditions, because if I remember correctly, obviously Umesh Yadav is also from Maharashtra. He's not exactly from Mumbai, but he's from Vidarbha actually, which is kind of in Maharashtra as well. So he brings a lot of experience playing in these conditions. And Tim Saudi has been part of MI, where he has played on these pitches also. So seems like if you are not playing these guys, you're basically losing out on a lot of experience and a lot of leadership experience.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, especially if you look at some of the other teams like Gujarat Titans. They're doing incredibly well, and they have a strong leadership group. They have Rashid Khan there as their vice captain, and he's been brilliant for them. They've really consolidated on a core group, and it's working for them. But KKR hasn't really been able to set on one solid leadership group that they could keep persisting with and have them there to like back their bowlers, back their batsmen.
And what do you think of Brendan McCullum as a coach, as a whole situation? Because last year, once they moved to UAE, they did really well. But it was not something, I mean, at least from my point of view, it was not something that was, it was not like suddenly there was great guidance on his part, or suddenly he had became this great coach or something. It obviously seemed like the bowling was doing really well, and batting was taking advantage of the set bowling, because a lot of games that KKR won was by bowling first, where their bowlers did well to restrict the teams. But from what I have seen of Brendan McCullum, he seems to chop and change things a lot, and do try to do all these experiments on in such sometimes very crucial conditions that have hurt the team. Like he has sent Shivam Mabi to bat before Tim Saudi and Pat Cummins and Umesh Yadav, who obviously have much more experience. Right when Chahal was bowling that over where he got 4 wickets, and he did this again when they were playing against GT, where again obviously once Mabi got out they were 8 down, so they did not have much of an option except to take the game deep. So seems like there's not been really good decision making on their part, to say the least.
Yeah, I know like Brandon McCullum is a big part of KKR. He's been a player for them for many years before he was coaching for them. But it doesn't seem like his captaincy, his coaching, sorry, is really filling the team with confidence. If your coach isn't backing you to go and play, bringing in another person, and then immediately that other person is being switched out, none of the players are going to feel that they're being properly backed. So it's not a viable coaching strategy where you could just push whoever you want into the match and expect them to perform immediately.
Yeah, and it kind of hurts a little more when you realize that Sam Billings had been with CSK, and he had formed a really stable position for him in the middle order, and it was like KKR had found this ready-made middle order player, to say the least, but they even failed to utilize that. I mean, if for someone like us who is seeing this from the outside, you see, KKR has pretty much everything they want. They have a decent opening pair in Venkatesh Iyer and Rahane, who maybe you could switch Finch if you want to, but that's a different thing. And even their middle order seems to have a lot of strong batters. There's Nitish Rana, there's Sam Billings, there's Rinku Singh, and but then you see them, none of them being utilized properly. I mean, they have only played Rinku in 2 games, and he has done really well in whatever chances he has gotten, and even their lower order is actually pretty strong as far as batting goes. I mean, you can play one of Saudi and Cummins if you want to. There's Sunil Narayan, there's Russell, and Umesh Yadav can bat a bit. So even after having all these batters, if they are struggling this badly, then obviously there's something really wrong with the management as far as the performances go. And looks like the management is hurting the confidence of the batting order as a whole.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's hard to see how like this batting order can probably get into like a groove and actually like click together and be able to make the most out of it, all these like great players that they have in their squad. I mean, if you have such a strong batting lineup down the order that could finish the games for you, you should be doing slightly better than how you're doing right now, at the very least, in my opinion.
Yeah, even in the game against Gujarat, you could see, even though the score was not really big, I think it was 160 odd, and yet the batter seemed in quite a hurry. Like even when the required rate was below 10, seemed like they just wanted to play their shots, and that's how they got out. I mean, a lot of them tried to push things. Even I remember Venkatesh Iyer, who was playing with Rinku Singh, and there was no need for him to play a big shot of Rashid Khan, or even for Rinku Singh to play a big shot of Yash Dayal, but they went for it nonetheless, and kind of that's what hurt them. Even though Russell and Umesh tried their best to get them over the line, but seems like the this whole trying to save the place mentality, obviously it has come, as we talked, it has come through the coaches, because if you do not feel secure about your place, how you're going to perform well? Seems like every batter has fallen into that trap of not being confident about their places.
Like I think in the Gujarat game, Iyer was batting down the order rather than opening or at three. So I know I think Iyer in past seasons he did bat down the order, correct?
Yes, he has batted in a few games, but opening has been his forte for
I
most
see.
of.
Yeah, so it's the same thing where if a batsman has to go from either opening or batting down the order. It's completely a different like game style that you're gonna have to play. You're not going to be able to quickly adjust to it if you're just constantly going to be changed around and the match scenario is going to be changed on you every time.
Yeah. Moving on to the SRH versus Gujarat game that happened 2 days ago, and I think it was a huge thriller in my opinion, because it was one of those games that people usually say they do not like because of the whole flat pitches, or too many runs being scored, or bowlers being not being in the game. But I think it was one of those unique games, in my opinion, where actually there were a lot of bowlers who did well. As I mean, there were almost 400 runs scored in 40 overs, but Umran, Malik, Shami, and Yash Dayal did well with the bowl as well. And obviously there were a lot of runs scored. There was Saha who did well. There was Abhishek Sharma. Shashank Singh finally got his chance to bat, and in the end, Rahul Tewatia and Rashid Khan finished it off. So it is one of those all-round games that has every a little bit of everything, and that is what you like about cricket in general. So I think that's what made this game really great in layman terms.
Yeah, it's especially considering you don't often see a game go down to the wire like that, and 25 runs being scored off the last over. And I'm not trying to knock Rashid Khan. He's a pretty good batsman, but I don't think anyone would really expect somebody that isn't like fully considered an all-rounder or fully considered a batsman to be able to take the game away like that. But Rashid Khan done it several times in the past, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it is not even that he does not score runs or something. He scores decently whenever he gets the chance to. But I think the way he bats, the whole style of batting seems to put people in kind of an insecure spot about
Mm.
his batting, that maybe just because he bats weirdly means he cannot bat. But I think from what I have seen of him in IPL or even in PSL and other places, he is the kind of guy who can hit the ball. But I think what people have questions about is, can he finish a game? I mean,
Hmm.
obviously there's a difference between batting in the last over in the first innings and in the second innings, because in the first innings, if you do not do well in the last over, there's still job to be done in the second innings. But second innings seems to be the time where there's no space for failing, because you have to get the job done, and it seems like Rashid Khan is doing it. He has done that against CSK as well, and now he has done here as well. So even though obviously he's not still a certified finisher like Rahul Tewatia is, but seems like he is evolving as a great finisher for Gujarat.
And just like an incredible pick for them as well, especially because he's there as a captaining option for them as well. I think it was the CSK game, right, where he was captaining.
Uh, yes, I
Well,
think it was that game where he was
mhm.
captaining.
So for Gujarat, he provides a lot that you're not going to get out of one player from many people in the IPL, especially. Like, you're not going to have one player that could captain your side, finish the game for you at a 190 strike rate, or be able to bowl 4 tight overs and take wickets.
Yeah, I mean, we just talked about KKR, about this whole leadership group thing. But as you just pointed out, Gujarat seems to have a lot of players that are, even if they are not, let's say, all rounder or anything, there's a lot of people in that squad who are serving multiple purposes. I mean, you have Matthew Wade, who is probably the most experienced T20 player in the team, in the whole squad. I mean, even if he's not playing, he can obviously help the youngsters with his experience. And the same goes for Hardik Pandya and Rashid Khan as well. I mean, Hardik Pandya and Rashid Khan, both of them are all rounders. There's David Miller, there's Mohammad Shami, both of whom have a lot of experience playing in the IPL. And there's obviously Riddhiman Saha, who has played IPL since the first season. Actually, he was the part of first game, if I remember correctly, in the IPL 2008. So that has been one thing with Gujarat team. There's a lot of players trying to help each other get better. I mean, I've forgotten Loki Ferguson. He's also a T20 nomad who has played all around the world. So seems like they have formed a group where there's a lot of skill and a lot of experience that is ultimately helping each other a lot, and that is how they're winning a lot of games right now.
Yeah, exactly. Especially considering this is a new team, they're not going to have like incumbents coming in, players that were pulled in from previous seasons. So for them to be able to take this leadership group, take these experienced players, and be able to go ahead and actually make a really good performance out of it, I think that's something that surprised people. But it's not very much of a reach to see that they would have done well based on all this experience and this like strong core group that they have.
Yeah, and one more thing I think that can be pointed out is, how we just talked about Shreyas Iyer and Brendan McCullum. Brendan
Mm-hmm.
McCullum being the coach and Shreyas Iyer being the captain. If you see the other new captains, you can at least see a bit of sync between the captain and the coach. I mean, Rishabh Pant became the captain for Delhi, and he has been working with Ricky Ponting for 2 or 3 years now. I think it's been 3 years. Uh, KL Rahul is the new captain. Obviously, the team is new, the uh, Lucknow team, and he has been working with Gautam Gambhir, who knows him from a while. And coming to Gujarat team, the coach there is Ashish Nehra, who has actually played with Hardik Pandya. So I think that is one great thing about these new teams and even Delhi, that the coach and the captain have a lot of sync between them, unlike say KKR, where coach and captain have probably never even met each other in general terms. So seems like that is working really well for them.
Yeah, and I think it's something that we often, when we're watching cricket, we don't see what's going on behind the scenes, so we don't know how the team composition really is and how well they're gelling together. But if your team isn't performing on the field, then repeatedly where they're constantly changing versus a team that's like stuck to a core group, had that core group carrying them throughout the whole series, and also just players that have played together in the past. There's differences that I mean, you could infer what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, there's guys in the new team where you can see that there is a little acquaintance between the players, and that kind of helps things in the background, because if you know someone from early on, then it helps things for you. And another player for Gujarat that has done well is Rahul Tewatia. So we have seen in or 3 seasons how Rahul Tewatia has emerged. Even before being the part of RR, he was part of Delhi, where he did not play a lot of games, but did well here and there. So, how have you seen his evolution, into this unique kind of finisher, where he's kind of a weird mix of making things happen and things happening around him. I don't know. I can't really put my finger on what exactly happens. But how do you see it?
It's really hard to decipher Rahul Tewatia's performances because at the same time you see people that are confident that he'll be able to finish it, and then a lot of people that think that maybe if we get that once in a blue moon special from him, then it'd do it. But it's happened a lot more often that you'd think it's not something that you could think that it's just like a complete like crapshoot that you don't know if it'll happen or not. It seems like he's a consistent enough finisher for them that there's confidence to be had down the order, and there is almost like probably even in the Gujarat Titans like squad, they probably have some level of coolness to them and confidence that they don't have to worry too much down the order because they have this strong finisher down there.
Whenever people talk about Rahul Tewatia, one incident comes to my mind. I don't know if people have seen it. Is on YouTube actually. I don't know if people have checked it out or not. During the first game of IPL in 2019, I think it was MI versus Delhi, and Delhi won the game. Rahul Tewatia did not bat a lot. I think he did not get a chance to bat much, but in the fielding he got 4 catches, and obviously there was a video of Delhi dressing room where the coach addresses the whole game, and once Ponting was done addressing the game, actually it was Rahul Tewatia who pointed out to Ricky Ponting that coach, I have taken 4 catches. Why did you not address me? And basically Ricky Ponting kind of laughed it out, or maybe he was a bit embarrassed, maybe to not point it out, to not address. And I think it was someone in the background asking Rahul that why does he want to get addressed if he knows that he has done well. So what he answered was that you have to push yourself to get in the front. I mean, people are going to keep ignoring you if you do not get yourself to the forefront. And it seems like that is his approach in the batting as well. He likes to push himself in those conditions, and kind of comes out doing well.
Yeah, it's a really weird scenario with Rahul Tewatia because I don't think anyone could at this point argue that he isn't an impact player, but it seems like from what I've read and from what I've seen, he hasn't always been backed as this impact player. But now that he's pushed himself into this role, people are really starting to see how useful he could be for teams and how useful he is for Gujarat right now.
Yeah, one thing that has been kind of a template for Indian players recently, that you see someone like Rahul Tewatia, who is actually not, as you said, not considered to be such a skilled finisher or a really skilled batter, to say the least. You do not see him, like playing all the classy shots or anything. But it has been kind of a thing with the players that have been coming in the team or in the IPL recently, that they kind of prioritize fighting spirit over the skill. I mean, you see someone like Shardul Thakur, who people say, okay, he's not that great of a bowler, or he's not exactly a conventional batter, or even Umesh Yadav, who, when you compare him to someone like Shami or Bhuvneshwar, might not have that much of an accurate bowling style. But even though they are not the best, they get the job done for you. And this is kind of the style that Virat Kohli has pushed around since he has become the captain. And looks like that is what works for them. Like it used to work for the Australian team of old.
Yeah, and I think another example would be Surya Kumar Yadav, who
Yes,
I know
yes.
Mumbai hasn't been doing that well, but I think he himself has been doing pretty well throughout the season, and he's shown that fighting spirit despite his team falling around him. Any time I'm watching the match or I'm paying attention to the score, it always seems like Sky is there to kind of pull Mumbai up and maybe get them to a respectable total.